The Christmas tree in front of Fox News gets set on fire and it is alleged to be arson. So we'll talk just a bit about what went on there and why there's totally not a war on Christmas. In other news, the Senate gets the debt ceiling raise and it looks like they are going to go through, and Republican members of the House are seething over the fact that that could happen. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on there. Russia, Ukraine, and U.S. tensions continue to rise. And it looks like Russia now has 120,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that and what that could mean coming forward and coming with this. And Illinois introduces a bill to force unvaccinated people to pay for their hospital costs out of pocket. You know, healthcare is a human right and all. It's going to be all this and more. Let's go, Brandon. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and as usual, as it's been for the last few weeks, we have got a ton of stuff to go over today. They never stop. Even coming into the Christmas season, and I'll talk just a little bit about some of the strategy coming into this with Russia and Ukraine. It looks like there's going to be another massive 24-hour news cycle news story that's going to sit there. It's going to hold our attention while everybody's coming back and doing a bunch of stupid shit in the background too. So you always got to make sure you're paying attention to everything that's going on around this and everything else that's going on around everything else with this, because, you know, it's just like the sleight of hand here. They're doing one thing over here in the Ukraine, and meanwhile they're raising your taxes, they're raising your debt ceiling, they're raising your built back bullshit plan over here while you're looking over here at the Ukraine. So we're going to try to watch all of it as we go here, but we'll go through all the news, or as much as we can get through, because that seems to be the theme of this show for the past few weeks over here on Contemporary. But before we get started, you guys, make sure you go and check out TurnSomePagesProductions.com. Goal for the end of the week is to have our new fundraiser up for this. Thank you once again for $580 and 80 US cents to help me and my friends fund our dream of giving you news by the people, for the people, by the common man, for the common man. Not news that comes to you recycled through somebody who owns a suit that costs more than your house, but news from people who have had to make some of the, or have had to make some of the same decisions you have. That's who you should be getting your news from, and we at Turn Some Pages intend to give you that kind of news here. So thanks for checking out the website. Thanks for checking out the great creators such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the Porch Boys. Thanks for checking out all those programs. They're awesome. They're all awesome guys, and you guys should get to know all of them as well if you haven't already. So go and check that out. TurnSomePagesProductions.com, coming soon. All right, let's look at finance here. Let's get the live chat up so I can see what you guys are doing. Nothing yet. No activity yet over there, but let's get it up there so we can see what you guys are doing here. And let's start out with our finance for the morning here. Looking into the Dow. The Dow had a smiley face day. You know, it jumped up with the futures, which we all knew it was going to because the futures were actually pretty high coming up through yesterday, and then it faltered throughout the day, throughout the midday, dropping down through, and then started to claw its way back up to just about where it was at its peak. So, and now it looks like it's going to be coming back down once again as well. So, we'll definitely watch this. We'll see where the Dow goes, and we'll see what that does throughout the holiday season. It's going to be an interesting one, and unemployment data is on deck for today as well. So, we'll see what happens with that. In your Bitcoin news, your Bitcoin is at 49,456 US dollars and 20 US cents. That is a decline over the past 24 hours. Dropping all the way down, 5 a.m., 10 a.m. And that's a a fairly significant decline, but we're back on the dip once again. And your other crypto plays are looking kind of the same way here. So pay attention to where your cryptos go. Like I say, this is not official financial advice. I don't always necessarily recommend going into Bitcoin if you can help it. If you do want to be in the crypto market, of course. If you don't want to be in the crypto market, if you have the theory of if you can't hold it, mold it, you should have already sold it. If you're in that theory, then I don't recommend getting into any crypto. But if you're into crypto, I don't recommend always Bitcoin. Of course, not official financial advice, but Bitcoin spooked me after the Georgia pipeline incident, where they told us that it's all untraceable. That's why the hackers are trying to get the Bitcoin, and then the FBI traced it. So take that for what it will be, of course. But that makes a good benchmark to see where the other cryptos are going as well. So that's one to watch here. 49,456.20 is where we're at the dip. Looking in at your scrap metal prices, your industrials. Copper is on the average on the rise. Steel is continuing to be on the average on the fall. And aluminum is also on the rise once again on the average. All of your copper plays are up right now. BX Steel is up. Most of your other steel plays are down, except for shreddable steel and stainless steel. Aluminum siding is up. Aluminum copper bin is up. Aluminum radiators are up. Cans are down. Sheet aluminum are up. Rims are down. Electric motors are up. Ballasts are down. Lead is down. Batteries are down. Catalytic converters are down. Compressors are up. Alternators are up. Carbide is up. Hard drives are down, motherboards are up, and power supplies are down. Still staying kind of the same way we've been seeing for the past few days here. Nothing really big except for some of the numbers coming off of this, but everything seems to be going in the same direction we've been seeing for the last few days. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning here. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones Futures, as market rallies, watch for this. Apple nears milestone. Trump SPAC stock DWAC soars, from Ed Carson. So, before we get into that, I want to point out, and I didn't realize this, but with Rumble going public, and by the way, this is still worth looking into, and this is also not official financial advice, but with Rumble going public, it looks like they are going to merge with the Trump SPAC and Locals together. So, Truth Social, Locals, and Rumble will all be under one umbrella, and that'll be your stock ticker there. I don't know, well, I do want to get on Rumble, obviously, but it's a paid subscription to stream from. But I do want to get onto it and just see what it's like and what happens over there. I do want to see that, but as it goes, I'm actually probably going to throw a few bucks into the IPO when it comes out. I fully intend to do that because I think that's going to take off, especially if YouTube keeps abusing its members, and so does Twitter. And Twitter continues to purge, by the way. It looks like it wasn't just our friend Stephen Ignoramus that got purged off of there. It looks like there was quite a significant purge that day. And we'll be talking about that when we get into the trial part of the news. But with that, let's see what Ed Carson has to say. Dow futures fell slightly Thursday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. The stock market rally attempt may had a quiet session Wednesday, with the major indices holding on to the prior two sessions' strong gains. Apple continued to lead, surging to record highs, nearing a market cap milestone. But the market rally attempt still needs confirmation of institutional support. Look for a follow-through day in the coming sessions. The lithium and battery tech ETF rebounded bullishly from its 50-day line Wednesday. The LIT ETF is a good way to play the lithium battery and EV market. Its top holding is lithium miner Albemarle, but Tesla and China EV stock and battery giant BYD are also notable components. Several China battery makers that aren't listed in the US are in the LIT, including Tesla supplier CATL. LIT is a good way to plan a broad EV trend without trying to pick a specific winner. I did not say that, so I believe IBD says this is official financial advice. But it's not official financial advice coming from me. I think we need to put that out there. I think legally I need to say that. Tesla stock is on the IBD leaderboard, and the IBD 50 lit is on Swing Trader. Trump SBAC Digital World acquisition spiked 28% to $65.42 in Wednesday's session. Trump Media and Technology Group and its planned Truth social media site are, for now, more of an idea than a going enterprise. DWAC stock shares a lot of qualities with so-called meme stocks, such as GameStop. But if you were to play DWAC stock, Wednesday offered a chance to do so on a technical basis. DWAC stock surged from its 21-day line and cleared its short-term resistance in the heaviest volume since late October, but already DWAC stock looks extended. The Trump stock fell modestly in pre-market trade on Thursday. Meanwhile, GameStop, the original meme stock, reported a wider than expected Q3 loss after the close when revenue topped views. GME stock retreated modestly overnight. Shares fell 2.3% to $173.65 on Wednesday, below their 50-day and 200-day lines. Also, late on Wednesday, upscale home furniture retailer RH delivered better than expected earnings and raised guidance. RH stock shot up an extended trade, signaling a move back near its 50 and 200-day lines. Dow futures fell 0.3% versus fair value. The S&P 500 futures sank 0.3%, and the NASDAQ 100 futures declined 0.3%. The 10-year Treasury yield dipped 2 basis points to 1.49%. Crude oil futures fell more than 1%. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we're seeing coming up out of IBD. Let's grab one from investing.com. Dow futures fall 110 points. Jobless claims data due from investing.com. Investing.com, U.S. stocks are seen opening marginally lower Thursday as investors take stock after 3 days of solid gains on lessening concerns over the Omicron virus and ahead of important unemployment data. At 7:05 a.m. Eastern Time, the Dow futures contract was down 110 points, or 0.3%. S&P 500 futures traded 15 points, or 0.3% lower, and NASDAQ 100 futures dropped 65 points, or 0.4%. The major averages all closed higher Wednesday, the third day of gains, with the blue-chip Dow Jones Industrial Average gaining 0.1%, the S&P 500 up 0.3%, creating the biggest three-day rise of the year for this broad-based index, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite rising 0.6%. Global equities have helped this week by indications that the Omicron strain was not as medically damaging as previous variants. Wednesday statements from Pfizer and BioNTech that their vaccine appears to be effective against the new variant after 3 doses added to the positive sentiment. That message suggests, third time's the charm, folks, that the booster shot programs being rolled out across North America and Europe will keep infection rates low until the pharma industry has had time to tailor its vaccines to the new variant, and the government gets to come back and buy 1 billion new fucking doses at full retail price, and then pass them all to the American people for free, because that's going to come out of your taxpayer dollars. Still, the COVID pandemic is far from over, with the UK Health Security Agency warning that the UK could register 1 million cases by the end of the month, given the steep trajectory of the Omicron variant. Investors also appear to be playing a waiting game ahead of Friday's November inflation report, with a higher number expected to cement a move by the Federal Reserve to speed up its tapering plans next week. Consumer prices are expected to rise 0.7% month over month, equating to an annual rise of 6.8%, the highest level for over 30 years. That's right, since 1991. And I think it was longer than that, actually. I think 89 was the last time we saw numbers like this. Which there was a Bush in office, so what do you expect? Ahead of the latest weekly U.S. jobless claims, the most up-to-date gauge of the strength of the country's labor market are due at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the corporate sector, Amazon will be in the spotlight after Italy's antitrust watchdog fined the retail online giant 1.13 billion euros for alleged abuse of market dominance in one of the biggest penalties imposed on the U.S. tech giant in Europe. GameStop will also be in focus after a troubled game retailer released another quarterly loss and disclosed a subpoena from the U.S. securities regulator for documents on a probe into its share trading activity. Yes, you're not allowed to make money off a stock that's being shorted by the hedge funds. They're the only ones that are allowed to make money off of this. And the people who got rich off of this, those are going to be the ones who are in big trouble here. Well, it was coordinated. GameStop is going to do the work. We're going to subpoena them. We're going to find their records. We're going to find out why the billionaires couldn't make money off of them. Additionally, the likes of Oracle, Broadcom, and Lululemon released earnings after the close. Oil prices handed back some of the recent strong gains on increasing optimism that the new variant will not cause a significant hit to crude consumption. Wednesday's U.S. crude oil supply data from the Energy Information Administration showed a draw of 240,000 barrels for last week, less than the previous week's 910,000 barrel draw, and also below the draw of 3 million barrels indicated by the American Petroleum Institute on Tuesday. By 7:05 a.m. Eastern Time, crude futures traded 0.6% lower at $71.91 a barrel, while the Brent contract fell 0.7% to $75.33. Dude, you remember last year when it was like $30 a barrel? And you could buy gas on 95 in Georgia for 91 cents a gallon? Additionally, gold futures fell 0.3% to $17.7950 an ounce, while the euro-US dollar traded 0.3% lower at 1.1310. So, a lot of stuff moving here financially, a lot of stuff changing, a lot of stuff switching hands here. I don't know where this is going to go. I really don't. We're in a weird spot right now because it looked like everybody was gearing up for the authoritarians in government to look at the Omicron and take the excuse to come back and shut us all down once again. But it looks like they were denied that opportunity, which is a good thing. As Bernie says, I think that's a good thing. But now we don't know what to do because people don't know, do I try to go back to work at this point? Is the next variant going to kill us all? It's the government, because they were already talking about locking down once again and banning travel. I don't think anybody knows right now where to go, and that's going to play hell on the markets because the markets look for consistency. That's when they rise, is when there's major consistency. Suppose I can put the news feed up here, can't I? Time to fire the producer. Oh wait, that's me. And producer Pepe's not going to go anywhere either. But that's what we see coming off the markets here. Let's get started with the big news of the day. And the first thing that I wanted to start with today, this is a big one for me, and this is a big one for a lot of people too. Now, I do not particularly care for Fox News. I make fun of them all the time because they are so biased. They're not even, it's not that they're biased. They're biased towards money. They put the same sensationalist bullshit out that everybody else does. And they will jump on the Democratic wagon as soon as Murdoch realizes it'll make him money. But right now, it won't make him money because the people that do watch it are just hate watching it because they think it's Republican. But they have no soul. They have no side in this. They have no stake in this. They have no interest in liberty. They have no interest in freedom. They have interest in putting a guy in a 7-figure suit up on the screen and telling you what it is you're supposed to think. Just like MSDNC, just like Fox, just like the New York Times, former newspaper, just like the Amazon Post, just like all these other companies, they have a stake in telling the people who are sycophantic to them what to think. So this is not a love lost for Fox News when I report on this. This is a love lost for some of the narrative that's put out here and the "there's no war on Christmas" argument. So this is the Christmas tree outside of Fox News. It's a little bit of jerky video, of course, but yes, that's the Christmas tree outside of it. Now, it looks like there's been somebody taken into custody for arson for this, And we'll talk about that in just a bit. Of course, his name is not released and his photo is not released. But our friends on 4chan have done some digging off of that. I'm not going to put this on the screen right now because of green check verification, obviously. You guys know how I roll on this program. I do carefully select and cite my sources so the leftoids in the world can't come back out and say, oh, all you do is go to conspiracy theory websites. But reading from Fox News, Fox Square's All-American Christmas tree burned in fire, suspect arrested. From Edmund DeMarch. The massive All-American Christmas tree outside of Fox News' New York headquarters was seriously damaged in a fire early Wednesday, and police say they arrested the man accused of sparking the flames. Fox News security spotted the suspect, later identified as Craig Tamanaha, climbing the 50-foot tall tree at the center of Fox Square just after midnight. The 6th Avenue and 48th Street location is in the heart of Midtown. NYPD officers arrived at the scene and saw the suspect running from the location. They took him into custody before filing charges that included criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and arson. City firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze. Crews will rebuild the tree this month, Fox News has confirmed. Tamanaha, 49, had 3 prior arrests, 2 for drug possession and 1 for public intoxication. He is said to be homeless, with a last known address in Brooklyn. There were no reported injuries in the fire. Police said the investigation was ongoing. They said it was not clear whether the suspect may have used an accelerant to quicken the spread of the fire. The red, white, and blue themed tree was 50 feet high, decorated with 10,000 glass ornaments and 100,000 lights, and took 21 hours to assemble the decorations. Now, as far as the homeless guy goes, I don't know if this is a person who's actually homeless. I don't know if this is a scapegoat. I know the victory lap that was being taken on Twitter when this first happened. And that's what I wanted to pay attention to and focus off of this. And this possibly might even be. If he was homeless, obviously he's not consuming a lot of social media, not watching a lot of TV. If he is indeed the culprit behind this one. But, you know, I want to look at this and take a second and think about and talk about the victory lap that left-wing Twitter took when this happened. And it goes right on to the idea of the Darrell Brooks massacre in Waukesha. And somewhat onto the Bernie shooter. You remember the Bernie shooter, the guy who went out to the congressional baseball game all those years ago. Or even the Jussie Smollett case, where he felt so terrified by everything that he needed to come back and make up a story. On the coldest day of the year, the literal coldest day of the year, in Chicago, in the deep into the heart of downtown Chicago. This is MAGA country. And some of this is pushing people to break. When you've heard for 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 16 years, in some points. Even further back than that, even going into the W era, even though they fucking love W now. When you've heard, all white people are evil. All white people want to do is push you down into the gutter. All conservatives are evil. They're all Trump. They're all corruption. All the MAGA people are bad. Anybody who doesn't agree with you wants to take away your health care. They want you to die in a hospital without being able to afford insurance. They don't want you to be able to go to a hospital. Everything that Fox News says is a lie. Everything that Fox News would dare to think, would dare to utter, is hateful propaganda. Then you get things like Jussie Smollett trying to make a crime to justify this. Like Bubba Wallace trying to make a crime out of nothing to justify events like this. You get events like this. And thankfully nobody was hurt from this. But somebody could have been. When you go out and set something on fire, somebody else's property. That's a dangerous thing that could spread. Somebody could have been too close. Somebody could have been near this thing having a look at it. Or when you carry a gun to a congressional baseball game and open fire, you're going there with the express intent to cause harm. When you drive an SUV through a crowd of people and your social media is flooded with kill Whitey propaganda. And hell, honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, honestly, full stop, full record, I'm willing to bet that there was this kind of rhetoric on the Oxford shooters webpage too, but that's been scrubbed quicker, very, very quickly, so we can't tell. When you have 100% nonstop, and this goes the other way too, by the way, with all the people on the MAGA side who tell you that everything that they don't like is socialism, it's all communism, they all want to take everything away from you. We could start seeing MAGA stuff. Now, MAGA people tend to be calmer about this kind of thing. But as they continue to get propagandized in the other direction, we might start to see some of the stuff like this, and not staged by the left or the FBI. But we keep repeatedly, over and over and over again, the congressional baseball game shooting, the Darrell Brooks massacre. Over and over and over again, the tree being lit on fire, the Jussie Smollett hoax, the Bubba Wallace hoax. And all the other side has is the Capitol Selfie Fest, which, once again, I'm not even completely remotely convinced that wasn't orchestrated by somebody else, a higher power to be. Oh, come on, we got to make sure. Don't you want to go into the Capitol? Come on, let's go into the Capitol. We won't have our voices heard unless we go into the Capitol. Especially when it goes on the leftward direction. And once again, I'm not going to forgive the rightward direction off this. I'm not going to forgive the MAGA direction off of this. But especially when it goes into a leftward direction where these people are very, very, very much propagandized and religiously affiliated almost. I mean, you listen to some of their words, some of their rhetoric, it does seem like a religion. And am I surprised that this is the culmination? Not at all. And I'm glad that nobody was hurt. I'm glad that it was just a little bit of property damage from a company that does have the means to come back and rebuild. You know, that goes on to another aspect of this and another avenue of this. It's like when I look at Kenosha and I look at some of these historic buildings that will never ever be able to be restored, businesses that'll never be able to be reopened because the building that they're in is 150 years old. And while their stores, the stores that are still open, technically, are probably going to be condemned in the near future because the structure, because it's a shopping center with 25 or 12 buildings, 12 little shopping spots all in a row, all connected into one building. That building isn't sound. Historic things that will never come back. From people, unlike Fox News, who didn't have the means to come back out. They got the insurance payment, so their mortgage is paid off, but didn't have the means to come back out and rebuild. But that's my 2 cents on this entire thing. That's where I have to go with that. Let's grab another one from Fox News. Or not from Fox News, rather. Let's grab another tweet here. Let's talk about the debt ceiling right away. Let's get that out of the way going, because that's moving a little bit here. Let's start with the red-haired bobblehead, of course.
I just wanted to ask you about the debt ceiling. It looks like there's some movement on that. Can you tell us whether the president has spoken with McConnell, Senate Majority Leader McConnell, on that issue, and if you feel like you've kind of gotten over that hurdle, does that open the door to other compromises and more bipartisanship?
Well, the president has always felt the doors open. He's never closed it. But I will say we are heartened to see the progress being made today and hope for quick consideration so we can focus on the president's economic agenda, his Build Back Better agenda that will lower costs for Americans across the country as early as next year, child care, elder care, health care, et cetera. And this would leave space to spend time and focus on that. We have seen Leader Schumer and Senator McConnell engage in discussions in good faith to move this forward to prevent a default. That certainly is a good sign, and today was a positive development. We'll, of course, defer to Leader Schumer and Speaker Pelosi on the legislative mechanics and the path forward.
Gee, I'm old enough to remember, by the way. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember this, but I'm old enough to remember that wasn't it just a couple months ago when the debt ceiling had nothing to do with the Build Back bullshit agenda? Weird! It's really weird that all of a sudden, now we're so glad we have motion on this debt ceiling bill, so we can go and work on the Build Back bullshit program. Isn't it weird how that works? And stupid fucking McConnell, this is the worst thing in the world. This is probably one of the worst things to happen for us and for future generations. Because now the door is wide open. Wide open. Walk right through it to go back and use that stupid ass reconciliation on the Build Back bullshit agenda. But we were sold a pig in a poke. Oh no. We're not raising the debt ceiling because of the Build Back Better agenda. Because that's already paid for, remember? No, we don't have to worry about that. And here we are, the red-haired bobblehead herself, expressing to us that no, we raised the debt ceiling. In part, so we could pass the Build Back Better agenda with no worries. She said the quiet part out loud, and nobody focused on that either, I noticed. When we talked about this in other outlets, other things that have been put out with this, but yeah, that's what it is. Reading one from Insider. The Orange Man getting involved in this because, well, it's what the Orange Man does. Trump rips McConnell for not using the debt ceiling to block Biden's agenda, saying Democrats' social spending bill it would destroy our country, the fabric of the country as we know it. This is from Eilert Sheffy. President Trump isn't too pleased with the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, especially when it comes to his negotiations with Democrats to make sure the U.S. can keep paying its bills to avoid a debt default known as the debt ceiling. Well, you're not the president anymore, so it's kind of moot. If you want to get involved in this, run. On Tuesday, the House voted to approve a reform to raise the debt ceiling, which would allow the Senate to lift and limit and continue paying the U.S.'s bills with a simple majority instead of the 60-vote threshold needed to break a filibuster. While McConnell remained adamant earlier this year that the debt ceiling is something Democrats must do on their own, this time around appears to be different, and the Republican leader expressed confidence that the reform will get GOP support in the Senate. But Trump made clear he does not support this reform at all on conservative talk show host Hugh Hewitt's show. So, Mitch McConnell has the greatest hand, the greatest, the best, and this is... Does he really talk like that? I didn't listen to the Hugh Hewitt interview. But that just seems so memeable right there. It's the best, it's the greatest, okay? He had the greatest hand, and I know something about having great hands, okay? Look at these hands, and I've held the right cards, okay? The great hands, they're the best hands. This is such an easy negotiation to kill the Build Back worst plan of Biden, which is going to destroy our country permanently. Okay, Trump said. And we have a thing called the debt ceiling, he added. And this morning, I hear he gave it up. He gave it up for practically nothing. Okay, I wrote The Art of the Deal, okay? You never give it up for practically nothing. You give them the big ask, and then they think they're winning when you bring yourself down, okay? I'm the greatest negotiator in history, okay? You guys, read my book, Art of the Deal. I'll read it for the first time this year later on. He could have used the debt ceiling card. The former president also said the debt ceiling is psychological, while President Biden's Build Back Better plan is not. And that the plan will destroy our country, the fabric of the country as we know it. The criticism of McConnell is not something new for Trump. Insider reported last month that McConnell appears to be ignoring Trump, calling him a broken old crow, after he helped Democrats suspend the ceiling by an additional 2 months in October. Since then, McConnell has met with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer a number of times. You can get that in a number of different places to devise the best strategy to ensure the U.S. can keep paying its bill and avoid a debt default. Other Republican lawmakers appeared to be on board with McConnell's plan as well. That would have paved the way for Senate Democrats to raise the debt ceiling on their own. I'm going to support Democrats raising the debt ceiling without Republican votes. John Cornyn, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. I'm going to support Democrats raising the debt ceiling without Republican votes. That means that you're supporting them raising the debt ceiling. You're giving them a vote. It's an indirect vote, you dumb fuck. To have Democrats raise the debt ceiling and be held accountable for racking up the debt is my goal, and this helps us accomplish it. Are you fucking stupid? But Mike Lee of Utah told the NBC News the reform is a terrible idea. Terrible, Lee said. This is nuking the filibuster. Thank you! The bill now awaits Senate approval, and it's still unclear if enough Republicans will jump on board. And McConnell rightfully deserves this, by the way. McConnell deserves to have his ass fucking kicked for this. He deserves to be primaried. Hell, at this point, it's time for the people of Kentucky to talk about removal. At this point. To take him out back behind the woodshed, and I'm not going to advocate for anything else off of this because Susan is watching. I'm going to mince my words very carefully off of this, but it might be time for McConnell to go. Because, I mean, broken clock on Trump. McConnell did give this up for absolutely nothing. He had every card in his hand. He had the royal flush. Where he could come out and say, oh, you know what? It's time. If you really want to raise the debt ceiling, use your budget reconciliation. I gave you 2 months to do it. Now use the reconciliation and take it away from the Build Back Better plan. They were between a rock and a hard place, and he just, okay, never mind. We'll use this here because this will affect my investments as well. And let's open this back up. And oh, you want to use the reconciliation for the Build Back Better plan? Oh, no, just go right ahead. Go ahead and do this. He was in a major place to put the final nail in the coffin of the Biden agenda. And here we are. Every card in his hand. And here we are. But that's what we have off that. From Politico, House Republicans seethe over Senate GOP's debt deal. Rightly so. Absolutely rightly so. From Burgess Everett and Olivia Beavers. House Republicans are questioning Senate Republicans' decision-making at every turn, a rift that's fueling intra-party fight over the debt ceiling. First, it was Biden's infrastructure bill, then it was last week's stopgap government funding deal that divided 2 GOP conferences, and after Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell cut a deal with Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer to ease Democrats' ability to raise the debt ceiling, tensions are boiling over between the wings of the Republican Party. In fact, House GOP leaders said the deal is so toxic they may not need to twist arms to get their members to vote against it. I would like to think this is bad enough that we don't need to whip it, said Chief Deputy Whip Drew Ferguson of Georgia. Senate Republicans say this is the best deal they could get, forcing Democrats to raise the debt ceiling on their own and to name a specific number as high as $2 trillion, rather than suspend the debt ceiling for a certain time period, such as through the election. Given the Senate's filibuster threshold, Senate Republicans say they simply have a different responsibility than their House colleagues, who can often vote against whatever they want in the minority with little consequence. It's just as easy to vote no, said Mike Rounds. There's nobody back home that thinks you should cooperate in red states with Democrats at all. I personally think we have a responsibility for those things we've agreed on with the operation of government. That's not a very popular position to take back home. The split between Senate and House Republicans boils down to 2 key factors. Former President Trump and the parliamentary rules. The gerrymandered House makes those lawmakers far learier of primary challenges, which makes bucking Trump the biggest risk to many House Republicans' careers. And Trump hates every deal McConnell cuts, from infrastructure to spending to the debt ceiling. That's because none of this needs to have money spent on it. All of this could be done at a local level. What's more, Senate Democrats need Republicans' help. At least 10 Republicans will have to support a bill that changes the forthcoming debt ceiling vote requirements to a simple majority in the Senate. House Democrats don't need the same assist, allowing House Republicans to breathe fire all over their upper chamber counterparts. We're so strongly against this process where they can just pass a bill with a majority in the Senate based on a rule change in the House. That's even more concerning. Minority Whip Steve Scalise said in an interview, "It would be a new precedent to say a rule in legislation in the House that you set up a 50-vote bill in the Senate. That's never been done before. It's dangerous." Nonetheless, both parties have supported fast-track exceptions to filibuster rules over the year, which need to stop. I am in favor, 100%, by the way, of going back to filibustered judicial nominees. I am glad that the nominees came under the last administration that did, on the non-filibustered one. But I really wish that they could have been filibustered instead. I am in favor. If you want to have a judicial nominee, even a Supreme Court nominee, you should have a vast majority of the Senate on board. This should not be a partisan thing. I like Kavanaugh. I like Barrett. I like Gorsuch. But I would have rather seen them get filibustered. And have the American people convinced as to why they're such good nominees and picks. Nonetheless, both parties have supported, and Senate GOP leaders are willing to provide the votes to at least advance the new procedure that will allow a filibuster-free debt ceiling vote later this month, because it will take the issue off the table for a year and allow them to focus on Democrats' forthcoming spending bill. Right, but you could have blocked that spending bill using the debt ceiling, because Democrats do not, while they're in power, want to see that debt ceiling falter, and they will put a reconciliation forward. But you blinked. Minority Whip John Thune said House Republicans criticizing McConnell's gambit are short-sighted given the possibility of divided government in little more than a year. I hope they realize this issue has to be dealt with, because if they get the majority in January, February of 23, they'll be voting to raise the debt limit. God, I fucking hope not. Thune said no. I know he's right. That's the worst part of this, is I know he's right. I wish he wasn't, but I know he's right. Thune said in an interview Thursday afternoon, "You have to kind of play the long game around here. There are bigger battles to be fought right now. The big battle is the $5 trillion tax and spending bill." McConnell faced the internal backlash for helping Democrats break a filibuster on the debt ceiling increase in October, so he's moving aggressively to squash the latest complaints from his party's right wing. Those will only tick up in the wake of Trump's latest broadside on McConnell's decision-making on Tuesday. No, he should. He should be shamed into what the fuck he did, because it was wrong. I'm telling you right now, it was wrong. He should be. Fuck, I'm going as far as to say that I said, way back when they said suspend the debt ceiling back under the commie fucking coup, that was a wrong decision too. I was informed, by the way, that if I voted for Trump the first time, that we would get a reduction in the debt ceiling, and I was optimistic about that. I realized I was fooled on that one, but I was optimistic about that because this is a guy who's run businesses before. But I'm not going to come back and do a whataboutism on it either, because it was wrong under Trump and it's wrong under Biden. Stop spending the money. But that's what we have on the debt ceiling right now. That's where it stands. We're waiting to see if it passes the Senate or not. Here's a picture you guys didn't want to wake up and see. My future wife, the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Hate democratic socialism, puppy? I guess you also hate a 5-day work week. Nothing to do with democratic socialism. That was a private sector proposal that came into the public sector because Henry Ford was trying to make his factories compete with unionized workforces. The weekend, see above. Minimum wage, yes, I do hate that. Welfare, yes. Public schools. You're seeing where I'm going with this. Police. Also has nothing to do with democratic socialism. In fact, these people hate police. Firefighters. No, I like those. I wish it was a more privatized force. Medicare. Yes. Social Security. Yes. Yes, I hate all those things. Except for the few exceptions that I brought forward. 5-day work. You guys have a 5-day work week? What the fuck is that all about? I work 7 days a week. A weekend? You guys get one of those? What's going on here? A minimum wage? My minimum wage is however much you guys decide to donate to me. Yes, I do have another job outside of this, but my minimum wage is whatever you guys decide my minimum wage is. And by the way, it's typically $5 to $10 a month. That's what my minimum wage is. So, thank you, horse teeth congressperson. But moving on into other things that the progressive wing is trying to push for here, CBS News, 4-day workweek gains support among progressives in Congress. From Irina Ivanova. The idea of a 4-day workweek gains popularity around the world. Some lawmakers in D.C. are pushing for the U.S. to follow suit. The Congressional Progressive Caucus on Tuesday endorsed a bill by Representative Mark Takano that would create a 32-hour workweek with overtime paid after 32 hours of work. Takano touted the move as a win for work-life balance and needed corrective after decades of longer work hours with stagnant pay in the U.S. People are spending more time at work, less time with loved ones, their health and well-being is worsening, and their pay has remained stagnant. It's time for a change, Takano, a Democrat representing California, said in a statement. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this is somebody who's from California. The bill would not eliminate longer work weeks, but would require employers to pay time and a half for overtime starting at 32 hours. It would also leave out a number of workers who are currently excluded from legal protections, such as gig workers who are legally considered independent contractors and salaried workers who are exempt from overtime. We'll correct this in just a second. Let's grab a little bit more to go with this. So this is their research. Takano's bill is co-sponsored by 13 Democrats. Comes in a number of countries. You can get that in a number of different places. And companies experiment with shortened work week, citing reasons from cost savings to mental health. In Iceland, large-scale trials of a 4-day work week were declared to be a major success, with participating workers reporting less stress and more time for hobbies. Look at all this time we have for activities, guys. Movie I've never seen, by the way. Rest or chores, all while work output remained steady or in some cases increased. Since the trials ended, 8 in 10 Icelandic workers have moved to shorter time schedules, according to a report issued this summer by Alda and Autonomy, a think tank. Working time reduction should be considered a powerful, desirable, and viable policy across contemporary advanced economies, the report declared. Similar test runs at companies in Japan and New Zealand likewise produced positive results, with workers getting more work done with less stress. Earlier this year, Spain moved to try out for a 4-day work week, with the government kicking in up to 50 million euros to cover participating companies' costs over the 3-year trial. There it is! Government hand going into this and making the private sector unable to compete against the government sector. The U.S. crowdfunding company Kickstarter is switching to a 4-day work week next year, following smaller software companies that have made similar moves. Okay, that's the private industry. Go ahead. If that's what you want to do, you'll probably attract a few more employees without having government involvement. Research backs up the trend. Some studies have found that long hours actually make workers less productive, with employees simply producing less and often making more mistakes after about 50 hours a week. One study of 2,000 office workers found that despite working 8 hours a day, the typical worker was only productive for merely 3 of them. The rest of the time was spent checking social media, reading the news, chatting with coworkers, or making drinks or food. Still, a 4-day work week has a formidable opponent in the American corporate culture, which puts great value on concepts like putting in face time at the office. While the pandemic has dislodged the expectation that workers are to be in a physical office, it hasn't done much for the actual work time. Indeed, workers who maintained their jobs during the pandemic found themselves working far longer hours than before, a factor in burnout in the current mass resignation. Even before the pandemic, American workers put in much longer hours than their counterparts in other industrialized nations. Among countries backed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, only 4 put in longer work hours than America: Israel, Korea, Russia, and Mexico. All right. With this, let's go talk about what this is. Now, first and foremost, this is a handout to the corporations, once again. Now, you might not think that it is, because everybody's going to have to go back and pay out overtime in order to get the same amount of work after 32 hours. And yes, you are still free under this law to work more than 32 hours a week, but it comes at the cost that it's time for them to start paying you out overtime, because that's how they need to get stuff done. And this does help the big business, and it hurts the small business. I work for what's considered to be a small business. I'm not allowed over 40 hours a week. And if I do get behind, I do cover it up on my time. I don't get paid for it if I have to work over 40 hours a week. My boss hates that, by the way. But they consistently give me 50 to 60 hours worth a week of stuff to do, and I'm only allowed to be on the clock for 40 hours. Consistently. So I'm already fucked. And I don't want the overtime, because I want to be sitting here in this chair creating content for you, the viewer. But I also know that I've got the list of things to get done, and I'm the kind of worker that gets stuff done that's handed to me. I don't leave until the job is done. But with that all in mind, I mean, if I was dropped to a 4-day work week, yes, you would probably get more content, because I would continue to work off of this. But, with everybody else that I work with, the service department couldn't get the production that they need out of having the workers on a 4-day work week. And, at time and a half at what the service department's getting paid, that would quickly cripple the company, scuttle the company. Now, if you go up into big business, your Microsoft can afford to do this. GE can afford to do this. Your big line factories can afford to do this. John Deere could probably afford to do this on their work floor, as long as they got the corporate backing from Moline, Illinois. Your big billion-dollar companies can afford to do this. Your small startups either have to cut their production or cut down their business. And when they cut their production, their big business buddies, their big business counterparts, can come in and swoop up and take up the difference. This is nothing but a handout to big corporate donors, once again. The ones that the progressives claim to hate. And they come back and say, it's a white-collar dream. No, this is going to affect the blue collar more than the white collar. The people that these progressives don't give a flying fuck about. Another one on the topic here from Insider. Progressives in Congress backing a bill for a 4-day work week, from Juliana Kaplan. Progressives in Congress are lining up behind a bill that would shrink a regular work week from 40 hours to 32, bringing the 4-day work week to America. The Congressional Progressive Caucus just endorsed the aptly named 32-Hour Workweek Act, according to a statement from Mark Takano, the Democrat representing California's 41st District. The caucus, comprised of nearly 100 legislators, is a key progressive voice and has made its power known during recent infrastructure negotiations. For far too long, workers across this country have been forced to put in longer hours as their wages barely budge. Chair of the caucus and Washington State Democrat Rep. Pramila Jayapal said in a statement, "And yet you continue to go print more money and push us further and further into inflation. Good job." In the U.S., wages have been declining for 5 decades, with economic growth increasingly benefiting workers less. As workers demand more from work and refuse to work in positions that don't suit their needs, a 4-day work week has caught traction. The shorter week has been shown in other countries to keep business booming and workers happier. Its implementation into law, or at least the mainstream, could mark a pivotal moment in America's rethink of work. It is past the time that we put people and communities over corporations and their profits, finally prioritizing the health, well-being, and basic human dignity of the working class rather than their employer's bottom line. Jayapal said the 32-hour work week would go a long way towards finally righting that balance. McConnell first introduced the act in July with the endorsements of leading labor groups like AFL-CIO, SEIU, and UFCW. Things that typically work for large startups. Still large startups, because AFL-CIO and UFCW typically only go to big corporate grocery stores. They don't go to little small town things. They're in the pick and save, they're not in Schnucks, to use a Janesville reference. The idea of a 4-day work week has started catching on amidst America's great rethinking of the role work plays in our lives. Joe O'Connor, the global pilot program manager for the 4-day work week campaign, told insider Stephen Jones that momentum for the shortened week has been incredible in the last few months. O'Connor is the coordinator of the 4-day work week pilot in Ireland, with the US and Canada next up for trials. In Iceland, a pilot of the 4-day workweek didn't lead to a drop in productivity, but it did result in workers reporting less stress and burnout, and higher levels of positivity and happiness. Countries like Scotland, Japan, and Sweden are all trialing the concept. The UAE also just announced that federal employees will be moving to a 4.5-day workweek starting in the new year, with the weekend now kicking off at noon on Fridays. They said it will boost productivity and improve work-life balance. Once again. Is this UAE? Yeah, UAE, the United Arab Emirates. I was thinking UAW for whatever reason. But Insider's Chris Weller has argued that the 4-day workweek remains a fantasy in America, due in part to the country's organizational structure. Employees would have to rethink how they assess workers, homing in on results rather than presence. Notably, though, the last 6 or so months have seen many Americans rethinking what they want out of work and employers scrambling to adjust, whether through higher wages or, yes, shorter work weeks. Once again, this is something the private sector can answer. This is something the government doesn't need to be involved in. And the companies that can afford to run a 4-day work week and still get the same amount of productivity, because they can put more people on staff, are going to see a bigger draw of influx of people. That's just that. If that's the standard that the private sector wants to set, then set it. You don't need a bill in government to do so. But that's what they have coming off of this. From Fox Business, Senate votes to repeal Biden federal vaccine mandate for business. From Thomas Barabi. Even if the House approves as well, the measure will face a Biden veto. So this is going nowhere, but it was enough fodder for leftists on Twitter to get pissed off at Joe Manchin once again. Reading from Thomas Barabi, the Senate voted Wednesday to repeal a President Biden-backed federal COVID-19 vaccine mandate for private businesses. You know, the one that's currently embattled in courts. The final vote was 52-48. Moderate Democrat Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and John Tester of Montana joined Republicans to vote in favor of the repeal. Even with the Senate approval, GOP-backed resolution is unlikely to overturn the mandate. The Democrat-controlled House is not expected to take up the measure, and President Biden will likely veto the bill if it cleared Congress. Republicans brought the repeal to the Senate floor under Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to review presidential executive orders. Mike Braun of Indiana, who sponsored the resolution, said the mandate was an example of the heavy hand of government hurting business. It's got Main Street America scared, Braun said prior to the vote. They're worried about, well, what does this mean on other issues? Anybody who thinks this is a good idea, imagine the next time it happens when you're on the wrong side of whatever the merits of the case would be. See, that's foresight that the left isn't capable of. Because they believe, because they've been told, that they will always be on the correct side of whatever issue is out there. The Biden admin's mandate requires private companies with 100 or more employees to ensure their employees are vaccinated against the pinko fucking pox or undergo regular testing. Firms that do not comply face steep fines. GOP lawmakers argue the mandate is too broad and constitutes federal overreach. Business groups who oppose the mandate say it's too burdensome given strained economic conditions. It's daunting to families as they're facing higher bills for their gas and their heating, Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia said ahead of the vote. I think they're very concerned about what this would do in their long-term ability to get a job, keep a job. I think they realize this is an invasion into their own abilities to make decisions about themselves and their health care. And yes, by the way, that's one thing that goes on and goes about this. If this was a good idea, and as good of an idea as they say, you wouldn't need to mandate it. People will be lining up around the block to go and get this. But because you've harped on it and pushed on it so hard, people have either decided to be contrarian, or they've looked at this and had questions. They've had suspicions about this. Because good ideas don't need to be mandatory. But, as I said, this is going absolutely nowhere just because of the structure of Congress. And it will get vetoed anyway, so that's what we see off of that. Let's talk some foreign stuff here. China in focus. Starting off here, it seems Beijing may have misjudged Brussels. The EU has decided to extend sanctions on Chinese officials and entities to keep China on its blacklist of human rights violators. Let's listen.
It seems Beijing may have misjudged Brussels. The European Union has decided to extend sanctions on Chinese officials and entities and keep China on its blacklist of human rights violators. The head of the European Parliament's delegation for China relations, Reinhard Bütikofer, confirmed that renewal on Monday. He says the sanctions will be extended through the end of next year. There are currently 14 individuals and 4 entities who have earned a spot on the EU's blacklist. Bütikofer explained that just days ago, leaders of the Chinese Communist regime assumed that the EU would lift the sanctions. But that assessment was a miscalculated one. He says Germany's new government is also playing a positive role in the EU's approach to China. Germany's new foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, has promised to take a tougher stance against China and plans to work strategically with its democratic allies. It seems Beijing may have misjudged Brussels, the European Union.
So, which it should be. I mean, we have the Uyghurs, we have the communism, we have the ghost cities. China is a mess. And if they want to continue to undercut everybody else in the world on cheap Chinese shit that is currently sitting on container ships outside of Los Angeles, then they need to start treating their people better, or we need to stop buying from them. Now, I understand the roles that governments play in foreign trade, but one thing to do to continue to sanction China as well. And I understand people being on a budget. I understand being on a budget entirely. I went from making a very, very good wage to being inflated into a moderate to somewhat low wage, because my wage hasn't changed, but the prices of everything has. I understand being on a budget, and even back, like when I lived with my ex, who was basically using me to subsidize her living costs so she could go pay off everything that she had to go pay off. I was on a very, very, very tight budget there too, and I went over a little bit every once in a while. But I understand the desire to get the cheapest product on the shelf. But one thing to say is that if you've already bought it, don't throw it out, obviously. But if you're in the store buying a dry good, or a material good, like a wrench. I actually happen to have a wrench just sitting up here on the table from the Do It Center, the Ace Hardware, in town. But if you look at the package and you see made in China, put that shit back. It's not just the government's decision whether to sanction and affect trade. It's your decision too. And if you see something right there that says made in China, Put that shit back on the shelf. Let it stagnate. If you're that interested in how bad China's doing. Yes, I understand it probably costs $1 less for whatever it is that's sitting there. But spend the extra dollar and take that away from Xi Jinping. Let's read a little bit about foreign news here. The EU is finally putting its money where its mouth is on China. From Luke McGee over at CNN Business. The EU has long been criticized for trying to have its cake and eat it too. When it comes to China, on one hand, it badly wants a strong economic relationship with its biggest partner for goods trade. On the other, it recognizes that Chinese government is a serial human rights offender and systemic rival. This attempt to balance contradictory realities has often led to policy incoherence from Brussels. It was the only time last year that EU and China finalized a major investment agreement to strengthen their trade ties. It included a number of communities. You can get that in a number of different places. Why does that expression keep coming up today? A number of commitments derided by critics as superficial on the issues such as climate change, despite China being the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, and labor rights despite European lawmakers passing a resolution just weeks before the agreement was finalized condemning Beijing's alleged system of forced labor for Uyghur Muslims in its western Xinjiang region. Fast forward 12 months, and the European Parliament will not even consider voting on the agreement. In March, the EU, alongside other allied nations, levied sanctions against several Chinese Communist Party officials over serious human rights abuses against Uyghur Muslims, prompting China to sanction several European lawmakers in retaliation. China has denied claims of atrocities in Xinjiang, but with neither side willing to budge, the pact is on ice. Now, a more coherent European strategy is coming into focus through a series of policies that have the clear ambition of countering China, regardless of what it could mean for investments into Europe. Last week, the European Commission unveiled a plan called the Global Gateway to invest €300 billion globally by 2027 on infrastructure projects, digital connectivity, and curbing climate change. While the plan does not mention China, it's hard to see this announcement as anything other than a direct alternative to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a wide-ranging trade and infrastructure project that would link economies from Jakarta to Rotterdam via Nairobi. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the gateway offered a true alternative to China's BRI, which has been accused of saddling some countries with huge debts since its inception in 2013. The BRI was once seen by some in Europe as a way of pouring money into the continent while modernizing its infrastructure, but Beijing's authoritarian turn at home and hostile foreign policy abroad in recent years has led to a radical rethink on whether having state-backed Chinese companies holding major stakes in critical infrastructure or allowing European countries to be in debt to China is the best place for Brussels to be. So, good. And once again, don't just let the governments do it. Don't buy their shit. If you can help it, don't buy their shit. Stop buying from that country at every avenue that you can. Now, some of the stuff I work with obviously comes from China as well, and I can see country of origin on some of the stuff, and at that point, I can't help that. Because that's a decision that's made in another place far, far above me, but on my personal shopping, if I go into the Target, if I go into the Kohl's, hell, if I go into the Woodman's and buy something and have a look, that's one of the first things I look for is country of origin off of it. And if it says China, and I'm not a USA purist either, I'm not a protectionist type like that. I do prefer to buy made in the USA. You know, like I say, one of the few times you'll get the endorsement of what I drink in the morning, but the Bang, typically it doesn't make it onto the screen unless they're paying me to do so, but just as the endorsement off of there, it says on every can, and I'm sure that there are some it says right there, there are important ingredients that come with this, but it does say point of final assembly in the can, made in the USA. Yes, I understand. Once again, there are important ingredients to it, but made in the USA, that's important to me. Final assembly, USA. So, and there again, if you want to take it away from China, stop spending the money on their stuff. Let's talk about the Ukraine, because that's going to be on everybody's mind for a while as we decide what's going to happen with that and the conference that happened yesterday. We'll start with Fox News on this topic. Biden to speak with Ukraine President Zelensky as Russian forces gather on the border. From John Brown. President Biden is slated to speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday about the Russian forces gathering on the country's border. The call with Zelensky will be followed by another, during which Biden will brief leaders of the Bucharest Nine about his 2-hour phone call Tuesday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. You know, the one where he couldn't unmute himself on the Zoom call? Which, once again, I made that mistake on the live stream before. You guys have called me on it. It's happened. The B9 comprises the eastern flank of USA's NATO allies, consisting of Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. Biden's phone call with Putin reportedly grew tense at times as they spoke about the roughly 100,000 troops massing along the Russia-Ukraine border. There were no missed words, man. It was polite. But I made it very clear. In fact, he invades Ukraine. There will be severe consequences, man. I won't let him have ice cream. Biden told reporters Wednesday morning about the call. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan announced the upcoming call between Biden and Zelensky on Tuesday. Is that still Biden? No. Oh, that's Sullivan. Jake Sullivan. I don't know what Jake Sullivan's voice sounds like, so we can't do the Sullivan voice. Our message to our friends of the Ukrainian government, as our message was today to President Putin, is the U.S. supports the Minsk process, wants to see progress made toward a ceasefire, towards confidence-building measures, and that is the best way forward, Sullivan said. Biden on Wednesday dismissed the possibility of sending U.S. troops to Ukraine amid the Russian military buildup on the country's border. That's not on the table, Biden told reporters regarding whether the U.S. would send troops to Ukraine. We have a moral obligation and illegal to our NATO allies if they were to attack under Article 5. That's a sacred obligation. That obligation does not extend to... Chill! What's my line? They actually have the dots in the article. He had to think about that. To Ukraine. So, tensions are heating up over that. That'll be fun to watch and see if we get pulled into another war over there. From Military Times. Let's use the one I archived. Let's get rid of the one that I didn't archive. Please disable your ad blocker. Russians have 120,000 troops on the Ukrainian border, increased intel gathering. The Ukraine ministry says. This is from Howard Altman. The Russians now have about 120,000 troops arrayed around the Ukraine, and they're increasing their intelligence gathering activities according to the latest Ukrainian military assessment obtained by Military Times. Those figures updated Wednesday include some 98,000 ground troops and about 22,000 air and naval forces, according to the assessment. In addition, Russia has carried 2,500 military exercises of different scales along the border with Ukraine, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, which including a series of strategic tabletop offensive exercises this year, another 3,000 planned for next year. Situation on the temporary occupied territories and around Ukraine remains difficult. According to the assessment, Moscow regularly demonstrates its military power and readiness for aggression. The main goal of the Russian Federation is to restore full control over Ukraine and thwart its Euro-Atlantic aspirations. While the latest assessment does not indicate the likelihood or timeline of potential invasion, Brigadier General Kyrilo Budanov, the head of Ukraine's defense intelligence, previously told Military Times that Russia is preparing for an invasion by late January or early February. The latest Ukrainian assessment provides an update on what that nation's military says the Russian troops are doing. The Russian Federation periodically redeploys and accumulates its military units to maintain tensions in the region and political pressure on the neighboring states, the assessment states. Redeployment of Russian military personnel is being carried out from the military exercise areas. Leaving weapons like Iskander short-range ballistic missile systems, tanks, and other armored vehicles near the border of Ukraine allows Russian leadership to create striking forces rapidly and lays the ground for quick reinforcement 1 to 2 weeks by engaging forces ready for offensive actions. President Biden on Wednesday insisted that sending U.S. troops to Ukraine to fend off Russian invasion is not on the table, but still promised a strong American response to Russian President Vladimir Putin if such a military advance occurs. I made it very clear that if, in fact, he invaded Ukraine, there will be severe consequences, Biden told reporters. There will be economic consequences like none he's ever seen or ever have been seen. Not official financial advice. Go check out that Raytheon stock. Northrop Grumman looks like it's about ready to pop. Alright, let's see what else we have here. Biden says U.S. troops in Ukraine are off the table but promise withering sanctions if Russia invades. From Kevin Liptak. A point that's been mentioned in the last 2 articles, but this one is more focused, of course. President Biden on Wednesday ruled out sending U.S. troops to Ukraine to defend the country from a Russian invasion a day after laying out consequences for such an incursion during a stern phone call with President Vladimir Putin. A stern phone call with Putin. I'm sure that as soon as the Zoom call clicked off, Vladimir Putin looked over to his allies and said, "This old man do nothing. We will have the Ukraine. We will have our ports into Black Sea. And then we will go to US and take moose and squirrel. We will have all. Because this feeble old fool do nothing." It was Biden's first time describing Tuesday's 2-hour conversation, which officials said grew tense at moments as the two men sparred over a massive buildup of 70,000 Russian troops surrounding Ukraine on 3 sides. Biden ended the conversation without any further clarity on whether Putin made up his mind to launch the invasion, officials said afterwards. Why would he stop? You told him you weren't going to do anything about it. You're just going to take away his bank account. But a day later, both he and Putin saw new diplomatic channels could soon be opened in an attempt to provide an off-ramp to conflict. Speaking to reporters as he departed the White House for Kansas City, Biden said he warned Putin that he would impose sanctions like none he's ever seen should the Russian troops mass on the Ukraine's border escalate to an assault. But he said the U.S. would not dispatch its own forces to protect Ukraine, a stance the U.S. officials have previously ruled out as well. That's not on the table, man. Come on. We have a moral obligation and a legal one to our NATO allies. If they were to attack under Article 5, that's a sacred obligation, man. Come on. That obligation does not extend to Ukraine. Instead, Biden said he told Putin in direct terms that the economic consequences of such an incursion would be devastating. I was very straightforward. There were no minced words. I was polite, but I made it very clear. If, in fact, he invades Ukraine, there'll be severe consequences. Severe economic consequences like none he's ever seen or ever have been seen in terms of being imposed. He said he believed his Russian counterpart received the message. He knows. His immediate response was he understood that. And then I offered him a Werther's original. And my handlers told me that I couldn't give it to him through the screen. Come on, man. So that's what we have coming off of that. All right, let's talk about some trial stuff here. Just a thought. Tweets out, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Because, as we can see, the original Maxwell trial tracker has been suspended. went along with the purge of everybody else that got popped almost immediately off of this. Not surprised, there's a lot of stuff in the Maxwell trial that a lot of people don't want to see, especially the new CEO of Twitter. They do have a new account. They're on Telegram. They are on Gab. Gab has confirmed that it's them. So if you want to use one of those other platforms. Otherwise, they're also back on Twitter. But you may not be able to join them at this point because they did privatize their account almost immediately. I have followed them. And then I trolled them and told them, oh no, I'm just trying to see the Maxwell trial stuff. I'm definitely not the new CEO of Twitter, and put the picture of the new CEO of Twitter up there. Just for fun. Just for the fuck of it. Alright. Let's start with Smollett, because I've almost entirely ignored that story throughout the week. CNN's Don Lemon blasted for not mentioning his own key role in Jussie Smollett drama. From Lee Brown. CNN host Don Lemon is getting blasted for covering his pal Jussie Smollett's trial on his late-night show without mentioning his own central role in tipping off the Empire star that he was being investigated by the police. As he took the stand Monday, Smollett, 39, had told the court that he first knew that police doubted his race hate attack was real after getting a text message from Lemon saying that it was key in his decision not to hand his phone records over to cops. The testimony quickly sparked comparisons between Lemon and his former CNN brother, Chris Cuomo, who over the weekend was fired for his own meddling with his brother, Governor Andrew Cuomo's sexual harassment scandal. So, between Lemon and Smollett, who do you think is the pitcher and who do you think is the catcher? But while Cuomo refused to report on his brother's scandal, Lemon ended Monday night show with a story on the latest news from the ex-Empire star's trial, with no mention of his own involvement. Lemon's straight-paced coverage, without mentioning his own involvement, sparked outrage online, some calling him a crook, probably not far off, and saying it was time for CNN to bid him goodbye. Please resign and salvage what you have left of your disgraceful career, one person tweeted, adding, the viewers are tired of your lies and divisiveness. Many others compared Lemon's scandal to that of his former colleague, Chris Cuomo. Did CNN's Don Lemon just pull a Chris Cuomo, one person asked, while another noted that, as well as the potential journalistic ethics issues, both men have been accused of sexual misconduct. If CNN is to be impartial, they need to suspend Lemon until further review, another commentator said. During Monday's segment, Lemon chatted on air to CNN correspondent Omar Jimenez, who has been in court in Chicago covering the Smollett case, promising viewers the very latest from the trial. The pair discussed Smollett's really risky decision to take the stand on Monday, as well as the actor detailing his relationship with one of the men he is accused of hiring to stage his attack. Yeah, apparently that guy can't go back home to Nigeria because homosexuality is looked down on very, 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 very far in Nigeria. They never once mentioned Lemon's involvement, even when discussing the Empire star's decision not to hand his phone over to police, which Smollett had told the court came after Lemon's text. Lemon's attempt at straight news reporting was a far cry from initial coverage of the attack when he admitted to CNN viewers that Smollett's case was personal to him because they were friends. He also admitted in a 2019 interview with Entertainment Tonight that he had texted the actor every day to check on his well-being. So, and yeah, I think it might be time for Lemon to go. I don't care for Lemon, period. I think he's a pretentious asshole, but especially if he's gotten involvement in something, especially after they just came out and dropped Cuomo. But he does have some shielding there. He is gay and black, and those are two things that CNN probably doesn't want to do on air. Eliminate a gay and black anchor. I almost said actor, which he kind of is as well, but that's what we see from that. From Fox 32 Chicago, Smollett trial, closing arguments begin on Wednesday. From Casey Cronus. Smollett's defense team rested its case Tuesday afternoon. Closing arguments are set to begin on Wednesday. Two very different pictures have been painted on the witness stand throughout the trial. Soon it's up to the jury to decide who is telling the truth. In this case, it's not focused on a single incident that happened on the streets. There's no video of the incident, but there are different versions of what happened that day, said Larry Yellen, Fox 32 legal analyst. Smollett made one last attempt to tell his side of the story while on the witness stand under intense questioning by special prosecutor, or I would say prosecutor at this point, Dan Webb. The former Empire star became frustrated Tuesday, calling the Osundero brothers liars. Smollett once again insisted he never orchestrated a racist and homophobic attack against himself. Ola and Bola Osundero say otherwise, testifying that Smollett staged the hate crime and paid them to execute it. The actor claims a $3,500 check he gave to Bola Osundero was actually for herbal steroids from Nigeria that weren't legal in the US. Did the jury believe Smollett's version, or did they believe the version from the two brothers? And they'll look at how they appeared on the stand, what their demeanor was. Were they confident? Were they shifty? That will all come into play, said Yellen. Smollett charged with 6 counts of felony disorderly conduct for allegedly lying to police if convicted. Fox 32 legal analyst Larry Yellen said Smollett's defense team will likely appeal. Because of course they will. Smollett's family and friends are maintaining his story. Jussie is the victim of a ruthless character assassination. This has been a devastating ordeal for all of us, said Fania Davis, Smollett family friend. Before arresting, the defense called its final witness to the stand, an Uber driver who drove the Osundero brothers the night of the alleged attack. He testified that he is not sure if the brothers had cell phones with them, but said at one point they got out of his Uber and got into a cab. So that's what the closing arguments are. Like I said, for this trial, for what he did, I should have paid more attention to it, but it's just, I mean, we all know that he did it. Everybody knows that he did it at this point. A lot of this is going to come out to what the sentencing winds up being and who else was involved in all of this here and the why. Why did he feel the need to come out and try to pretend that this is MAGA country could actually happen on a negative 20 day, or night rather, negative 20 for a low overnight that day, or that night, in downtown Chicago, where there sure are a lot of MAGA people, aren't they? From Insider, Jussie Smollett sniped at the prosecutor cross-examining him on the stand. You do not understand Instagram. From Natalie Musumeci. Well, given what we saw with Binger and the defense attorney, I cannot think of his name. Mark, I know, was his first name. Over in the Rittenhouse trial, that's actually a believable statement. The cross of Jussie Smollett at his criminal trial on Tuesday got heated with a former actor sniping at the prosecutor. You do not understand Instagram. Smollett, 39, snapped at the special prosecutor Dan Webb as he grilled him about some of his private Instagram messages with Abimbola Osundero, one of the two Nigerian brothers authorities say Smollett hired to stage the January 2019 attack in Chicago, the New York Post reported. Mr. Webb, with all due respect, you do not understand Instagram, Smollett said as he was questioned about the message, according to the news outlet. Webb fired back, look at me, I'm older. I tell you right now, I do not understand Instagram. I'm asking you if the messages I'm about to show you are between Bola and you. The prosecution said that Smollett sent a series of messages to Osundero in the hours leading up to the alleged 2019 attack about the actor's flight delay, as evidence that the two were coordinating, according to the Post. But Smollett insisted that he had updated his millions of followers about the flight delay by posting it on an Instagram story. You're misrepresenting me to the jury and the entire court, and that's not fair, Smollett told Webb, according to the Post. Without showing the actual Insta stories that I posted, they're not getting the full story, and they don't understand. At one point, Webb asked whether Smollett told investigators that his attackers were white because it would have made the hate crime claim more credible. You would have to ask someone who's actually planned a fake hate crime, Smollett shot back, according to CBS News Chicago reporter Charlie DeMar. Smollett, who is black and openly gay, finished testifying on Tuesday on his trial of 6 counts of disorderly conduct for accusations that he falsely reported to police that he was the victim of a racist and homophobic attack. Yeah, it might be time And I know that there's not a lot of legal minds out there. I know like Elaine for Liberty over on Twitter is one of them who's going to be going into this. But it's time to circle out some of the boomer and the Gen X guys off the bench here and off the bar, because technology has changed to a point where they don't know what's going on. And I mean, I understand Smollett's point to this, regardless, of course, because it was the Nigerian brothers who have come out and said that he paid them, and they got the receipts that he paid them. They don't have the receipts on what they paid him for, but they have the receipts that he paid him, and none of this looks good for Smollett. Without being a little bitch on the witness stand on top of it. From the Daily Wire. Should be next to get tanked. Politico's call for CNN to fire Lamone after Smollett revelation. From Amanda Prestigiacomo. Man, I spent way too much time talking about that Christmas tree story, because we're running up on the clock again, and I've still got half the stack. Politicos are pressing for CNN to fire Lamone over concerns about the host's possible connection to Empire star Jussie Smollett's alleged orchestrated anti-gay, anti-black hate crime hoax following testimony from the actor this week. As reported by the Daily Wire, Smollett, who's facing up to 3 years behind bars for allegedly lying to police, testified under oath on Monday that he did not hand his phone over to authorities following the alleged attack, in part due to text messages he received from Lamone, apparently tipping him off about the officer's skepticism of the alleged hate crime. Yeah, this is a lot of the same information that was in the CNN article, so we're gonna probably skip this one over here. Should he resign? I think so. If he's using his journalistic measures to go tip off or try to change or taint an investigation, then yeah, he should. That's the exact same thing that Cuomo was doing. It's the exact same crime. Yeah, he should be forced to resign. Will CNN actually do it? Probably not. But he should be. Absolutely should be. Quick update on the Michigan story. Accused Michigan school shooter gets court-appointed lawyer, his parents hire legal team. From Jorge Fitzgibbon, this story just gets stranger and stranger as we go. These parents, who as parents should possibly do everything they can in their power to protect their child, seem to be throwing their child under the bus and keeping the good lawyer for themselves. Accused Michigan high school shooter Ethan Crumbley was given a court-appointed lawyer while his parents hired their own pricey private legal team to battle the lesser charge against them, a new report says. James and Jennifer Crumbley, who were charged with involuntary manslaughter as accessories in their 15-year-old son's first-degree murder case, have hired a team that includes Shannon Smith, who represented the disgraced USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar, The Independent reported. Their son, on the other hand, is being represented by court-appointed lawyer Paulette Michael Lofton, a little-known defense attorney from the Detroit suburb of Rochester. Ethan faces life, if convicted, on 4 counts of first-degree murder, terrorism, and 7 counts of assault with intent to commit murder on the November 30th shooting at Oxford High School that killed 4. His parents were arrested last weekend after fleeing manslaughter charges. While their move to hire pricey lawyers may seem a bit cold-hearted move that leaves their son fending for himself, one prominent lawyer says they may have a reason. In some cases, the parents have got a harder case than their kid, veteran defense lawyer Bill Swore told the Detroit Free Press. They're adults, he's a child, and the father bought the gun, Swore said. The mother made the social media postings, and public officials made public statements that are very prejudicial. The Crumbleys purchased the 9mm semi-automatic handgun their son allegedly used in the shootings and refused to take him out of school after a meeting with administrators over a disturbing drawing the teen had made. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I don't have kids, but I bet you that Chilago and MK Ultra would probably both say the same thing, where if they were ever in a situation like this, well, the punishment would be severe for the children because they're good parents, and your punishment should be severe at home if your kids do something like this. They would still pull out all the stops to make sure their children are protected from the state machine, especially in a democratic state like Michigan. I know I would. I don't even have kids. Hell, with my nephew, if there was some involvement out there somewhere where something bad had happened, and I had been involved and charged as well, I would take the public defender and let Pugsley get the good lawyer. I would take the bullet for my nephew and nieces. And they're one step removed in relation from me. Those are my sister's kids. And I would still take the bullet for them. I can't imagine the outswelling of compassion that should come from a direct parent-to-child lineage. I don't have that, unfortunately. I can't imagine how much more intense that outswelling is. I can't even begin to imagine that. But I just know that I can't believe that you wouldn't pull out all the stops to try to protect your kid no matter what. But, well, I guess we'll see what happens with them. Some January 6th news. Ryan Nobles tweets out, just in. New filing in D.C. District Court. Meadows versus Pelosi et al. It appears the criminal contempt looms. Mark Meadows is going on the offensive by suing the 1-6 Select Committee. Filing details not available yet. Let's read a little bit about this. Well, let's get a few more of these in so we don't have so much to do tomorrow, so we can spend more time on live chat, of course. And we do still have thing that I like and two things that I hate. So sit tight for just a little bit longer. Then I promise we'll get over to Daily Ignoramus in a short amount of time because I do have to get up and go to work as well. But let's get just a couple more of these in. There are a couple especially big ones that I want to make sure that I get to. Mark Meadows sues Pelosi January 6th committee members as they push to hold him in contempt. From Kevin Bräuninger. I am going to actually save this one because I know that it's after 9, and I do want to spend a little bit of time on this one. I'm going to be your deep dive guy on this one here that we have from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, so we're going to wait on that one for sure, but I do want to get through a couple other ones of these. I want to do a little bit more like top of the show deep dive on that Journal Sentinel one, though. Let's see what Bräuninger has to say. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows on Wednesday sued House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and all 9 members of the House Select Committee investigating the deadly Capitol selfie fest, a court filing shows. The civil suit came as the Select panel moves to hold Meadows in contempt for refusing to cooperate with the probe of the invasion, when then President Trump's supporters calmly walked into the Capitol, milled around, took selfies and pictures of each other. The lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Washington asked the court to invalidate 2 subpoenas that the panel had issued to Meadows and Verizon, the carrier for his prior personal cell phone, calling them overly broad and unduly burdensome. The 43-page complaint notes that Trump in early October instructed Meadows to not comply with the subpoena for his documents and testimony, claiming those materials are covered by executive privilege. President Biden, however, waived Trump's privilege claims, prompting Trump to file his own lawsuit against the Selfie Fest probe. Meadows' complaint argues that he's been put in the untenable position of choosing between conflicting privilege claims that are of constitutional origin and dimension. It asks the court to settle the dispute. A spokesman for the Select Committee declined to comment on the lawsuit. A lawyer and spokesman for Meadows did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Meadows is the 3rd Trump ally to face the threat of contempt proceedings from the House for refusing to comply with the Capitol riot probe. Last week, the Select Committee voted to advance contempt proceedings for the ex-Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark. And of course, Steve Bannon on top of this here. Good. Good. Let's not let Congress, as a legislative body, not even a judicial body, let's not let them have this broad purview where they can call whoever the hell they want in front of them, grill them for hours on things that probably have nothing to do with the selfie fest, to try to drum up and dig up dirt for the upcoming election, which I'm pretty positive the Orange Man's going to run in. I'm not going to vote for him this time through, but that doesn't stop him from running. More congressional news here. Presley introducing resolution to strip Boebert of committee assignments. from Daniela Diaz over at CNN. Progressive Democratic Rep. Ayanna Pressley of Mass is introducing a resolution co-signed by other progressives that would strip Colorado Republican Lauren Boebert of her committee assignments for her anti-Muslim and racist comments towards Democratic Rep. Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Whether the resolution will get a vote is largely up to House Speaker Pelosi. One Democrat close to the Speaker told CNN on Wednesday morning that no final decisions have been made about how to deal with Boebert, but one option that has been discussed is potentially referring the matter to the House Ethics Committee. That move would be a way to avoid a cycle of leadership always having to take floor action unilaterally. But the members also pointed out that Boebert's continual digging in is building pressure, adding, I think it's putting kerosene on a fire. Pelosi dodged when she was asked if she supported the resolution on Wednesday and repeated her call for GOP leadership to punish members of their conference. It's the responsibility of Republicans to discipline their members, the California Democrat said, a reference to how GOP House leadership declined to take action against Boebert since her remarks have been widely circulated. Democratic leaders are leery of punishing GOP members every time they do something outlandish, the source said. Lawmakers and aides have also privately shared concerns about punishing Boebert for her rhetoric, considering she wasn't threatening violence towards Omar. Threatening of violence is the reason why Democrats have previously stripped Reps Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Paul Gosar of Arizona of their committee assignments this Congress, both of which are bullshit. But once again, and I think that some of these people are smart. Just a quick read down off this before I put my comment off of this. Omar called on both Pelosi and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, to take action against Boebert and called the language hateful and dangerous. Normalizing this bigotry not only endangers my life, but the lives of all Muslims, Omar said in a recent tweet, responding to Boebert. Anti-Muslim bigotry has no place in Congress. Republicans have in the past stripped committee assignments from its members, as was the case with former Rep. Steve King of Iowa in January of 2019 following racist remarks. McCarthy has declined to make a push for Boebert to lose her committee post, nor did he push for Gosar or Greene to lose their assignments. There might be some intelligence coming up here from House Democrats. They might have figured out what I said as soon as they pulled Marjorie Taylor Greene's committee assignments. They might have actually shown some intelligence and grown. Which is amazing, by the way. As I said, right from the time they stripped Greene of her committee assignments, I said right from the time, this is not good, this is dangerous. Before Marjorie Taylor Greene, no opposite party member had a say in what any member of Congress had for committee assignments. Those were done in party and they were removed in party, such was the case with Steve King. Before Marjorie Taylor Greene, that had never happened before. And now it's happened twice and moving on to a third time in one Congress. In one Congress, we could see this happen one more time. And if Republicans take the House back, as petty as they are, because, they say that one of the good things that Trump did for the Republican Party was he gave the balls back to Republicans. Any little thing that a Democrat does out of line, Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitism, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's stupidity, her shrieking statements, we could see a Congress with no Democrat committee assignments. From a bed that Democrats made for themselves. But no, tell me more about how you just want to go back and punish Republicans. For little to next to nothing. Alright, we'll do one more and then we'll do a thing I like and two things that I hate. From the Daily Wire, White House working behind the scenes with media to get positive coverage, according to a report from Joseph Curl. Officials in the Biden admin have been secretly begging news organizations to deliver favorable coverage to the president, according to a new report. The admin is not happy with the endless news reports detailing supply chain problems, soaring inflation, and other woes that it has been working behind the scenes to try to reshape its coverage in its favor, CNN's reliable sources said, according to the New York Post. The report also says senior White House administration officials have been briefing major newsrooms over the past week. Leading meetings are National Economic Council Deputy Directors David Kamen and Bharat Ramamurthy, as well as Port's envoy John Porcari. CNN reporter Oliver Darcy wrote in a newsletter. I'm told the conversations have been productive, with anchors and reporters and producers getting to talk with the officials, Darcy wrote. The effort seems as if it could be working. The Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darknesses, Dana Milbank, recently penned an op-ed headlined "The media treats Biden as badly or worse than Trump. Here's proof." No fucking way. Milbank says data from a report shows Biden's press for the past 4 months have been as bad as and for a time worse than coverage of Trump received for the same 4 months of 2020. The columnist also said his analysis confirmed my fear. My colleagues in the media are serving as accessories to the murder of democracy. Oh my god, are you fucking serious? It's not the first time the White House has been accused of trying to influence the media. White House Press Secretary red-haired bobblehead was hit just weeks into her job for reportedly soliciting journalists for the questions they'll be asking in her daily briefings. Just another 10 days into her gig, a report emerged that said she was quietly soliciting questions from journalists about what they planned to ask during the daily briefing, a big no-no. The Daily Beast on February 1st published a story headlined, "White House reporters, Biden team wanted our questions in advance." According to 3 sources with knowledge of the matter, as well as written communications reviewed by the Daily Beast, the new president's communications staff have already on occasion probed reporters to see what questions they plan on asking the new White House press secretary, red-haired bobblehead, when called upon during briefings, the story said. While it's a relief to see briefings return, particularly with commitment to factual information, the press can't really do its job in the briefing room if the White House is picking and choosing the questions they want, one White House correspondent said. That's not really a free press at all. And by the way, neither is the presidency coming out and telling you. No, we only want the questions that we get to pre-select. That's the only thing that we want. And hey, can you guys come in here and just report more positively to media outlets like CNN that have done nothing but circle the wagons for the Biden admin, but still coming out and reporting things as fairly as they possibly can while keeping their corporate backing. It's literally coming out here and saying, hey, can you circle the wagons just a little bit harder, please? Please, a little bit harder. Just circle it a little bit more. Drop to your knees and suck the presidency's dick just a little bit more, please? Please, just a little bit? Come on. Come on, guys, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. I can't believe this is an actual thing. And I can't believe either, by the way, that the Washington Post, Dana Milbank, came out and said, oh no, they're harder on Biden than they are on Trump. Are you fucking kidding me? Did you have your eyes closed for 4 years and just open them once during a few stories in 2020 about the Donald? He was a wall of negative propaganda, constantly. Whereas with this presidency, it's, oh, Mr. President, what kind of ice cream did you take today? There is no comparison to this. And this presidency should be goddamn grateful that the only negative press that they got is a little bit of supply chain issue stuff and a little bit of inflation stuff when they can't hide it anymore. They should be sitting down there talking to these journals saying, yes, please, may I have another? So that's what this is. All right. And the last thing that we do at the end of a Thursday is a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, which I've actually got 2 things that I hate today. But we're going to go back to the Ukraine for the thing that I like. And I do want to thank Arvold for dropping this in the Discord. It's an article worth investigating. Not a Funny Papers meme, because that's what I thought it was too. I thought it was a Funny Papers meme, and then I looked at it closer. This comes from the official account of the Ukraine on Twitter. Types of headaches: migraine, behind the eye, hypertension, back of the head, stress, the kind of L shape up here. Living next to Russia, the whole head is throbbing. The Ukraine, on its official Twitter account, is taking jabs at Russia. They're memeing Russia into non-existence, which is what we need to be doing to the Biden administration. Let's go, Brandon. Memeing that out of existence too. But, I could see some internet edgelord putting something else out like this, but the actual official Ukraine account, blue checked, at Ukraine. Yes, this is the official Twitter account of Ukraine. Nice pics, hashtag beautiful Ukraine. Our music, Yuki Beats. Which I didn't know that the Ukraine actually had an official Twitter account. That's amazing to me, by the way. Even the Ukraine getting involved in the meme war. Oh, this is the best timeline in the world. It is simultaneously the worst timeline in the world, but this is one of the best timelines in the world. You'll love to see it. You'll love to see these little white pills scattered around everywhere in the midst of a field of black pills on how badly everything is going. And, in a week where we do have two things that I hate as well. But you love to see it. You do love to see a little bit of a white pill here. Now, for some things that I hate. And they're both coming from the Changing America segment of The Hill, by the way, which should tell you something about how I feel about The Hill. Number one thing that I hate today. George Orwell's estate approves retelling 1984 from a woman's point of view. From Alejandro O'Connell Dominic. The estate of George Orwell has given the go-ahead for a feminist retelling of the British author's classic novel 1984, according to The Guardian. Now, I want to give you full disclosure and say that I haven't read 1984. It's in my Kindle. I need to sit down and read it, but I have never read Orwell. I've researched Orwell extensively, I live Orwell right now, but I've never read Orwell. I have both Animal Farm and 1984 in the Kindle, ready to go. But I just saw this, I'm like, why? Why do you need to do this? American author Sandra Newman will tell the story of Orwell's 1984 through the perspective of protagonist Winston Smith's lover, Julia. It was the man from records who began it, him all unknowing in his prim, grim way, his above-it-all old-think way. He was the one Syme called Old Misery, Newman writes in an excerpt of the book obtained by The Guardian. Comrade Smith was his right name, though comrade never suited him somehow. Of course, if you felt foolish calling someone comrade, far better not to speak to them at all. Orwell's classic is a dystopian novella written in 1949 that tells the story of Winston Smith, a low-ranking officer in the ruling party in a futuristic London in the fictional nation of Oceania, which is governed by an omnipresent leader known as Big Brother. The book is a cautionary tale against the effects of totalitarianism, and it was allegedly inspired by Russian novelist Yevgeny Zamyatin's book, We, published more than 20 years prior, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Orwell's estate told The Guardian it had been looking for some time for an author to tell the story of Smith's lover, and Newman proved to be the perfect fit. Two of the unanswered questions in Orwell's novel are what Julia sees in Winston and how she navigated her way through the party hierarchy. Sandra gets under the skin of Big Brother in a Brother's world in a completely convincing way, which is both true to the original, but also gives a dramatically different narrative to stand alongside the original. Orwell's estate literary executive Bill Hamilton told The Guardian, the millions of readers who have been brought up with Orwell's 1984 will find this as provocative and satisfying companion. So I might have to walk back my hatred a little bit, because it looks like they are trying to somewhat stay true to the book's ideas, which, okay, of course, once again, I haven't read the book, so... But it looks like they're actually making an attempt to stay true to the book. this might wind up being a thing that I like. I might have to read this one now. Because it's not just on, one man to stand up to the party, of course. It's on all of us here, and we all have to do it organizedly. That's, why I have all my friends, hopefully, once we get the site launched, to Turn Some Pages Productions. Because we need a united front. We need the united fronts of the audiences. We need the united fronts of the creators. And even the creators we don't get along with. Like I mentioned before, I don't particularly get along with Matt Christensen anymore. But I urge people to still go listen to him. I will not listen to him because of what's personal between him and I. But he is a great repository of information, and I encourage other people to go and listen to him because we do still need to be united, in spite of our personal differences. This isn't like Liberty Twitter, where a little personal difference can turn the entire Twitter sphere into a raging argument with everybody trying to yank dominance. Our common enemy is the Big Brother totalitarian-style government, and we need to work together to protect ourselves from it. To get the government to leave us alone. That's the important part of this. So I might like this, actually. This might actually be kind of cool. Yeah, I think MK Ultra just kind of said the same thing. This definitely wouldn't work for the story because, when you first start hearing about this, you think, okay, we're going to replace the main character. We're gonna change Winston into a chick. But since they're doing an entirely, existing, but entirely new storyline and a new character, not necessarily trying to redo what Winston did, but with a vagina, this actually might work quite well. I'm kind of excited for this now. And now I've got to sit down, and once I finish Sum of All Fears, sit down and read the original 1984, after Starship Troopers, because I promised John, but actually sit down, finish the book I'm on, do the next book that I promised out there, and then do 1984 and this new futuristic one as well. So we'll see what happens with that. And now for a thing that I do hate. Also from the Hill, Changing America. Assisted suicide pod approved for use in Switzerland. And we actually have, I did find, I gotta Google it again, a picture of what this looks like. We have a real life picture of what this is gonna look like. Are you ready? There it is. That's not what it actually looks like, but let's talk about this one here from Joseph Guzman. A 3D printed coffin-like pod developed to carry out assisted suicide may soon begin legally operating in Switzerland, according to local media reports. Assisted suicide is legal in some countries under certain circumstances, including in the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Canada, and Switzerland. Most countries where assisted suicide is legal require people to have an incurable or terminal illness. According to news outlet Swissinfo, a member of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, the suicide pod, dubbed the Sarko machine, cleared legal review in the country and could start operating sometime next year. So, do you put a quarter in there? Have all the tools come out here, and then the voice at the end say, "Congratulations, you are now dead"? I mean, is this going to be completely like Futurama? The Sarko machine has been developed by an international nonprofit organization, Exit International, which advocates for voluntary euthanasia and assisted suicide. While assisted suicides in the country typically involve the ingestion of liquid sodium pentobarbital, a capsule offers a peaceful death without the use of controlled substances, Philip Nitschke, founder of Exit International, says. The person will get into the capsule and lie down. It's very comfortable. They'll be asked a number of questions. When they have answered, they may press the button inside the capsule, activating the mechanism in their own time, Nitschke told Swissinfo in an interview. Nitschke explained the pod will then start the process of flooding the inside with nitrogen, which will reduce the oxygen level from 21% to 1%. He said the person will feel disoriented and slightly euphoric before losing consciousness. The whole thing takes about 30 seconds. Death takes place through hypoxia and hypocapnia, oxygen and carbon dioxide deprivation, respectively. There's no panic, no choking feeling, he told the news outlet. The pod can be towed anywhere for the death, according to Nitschke, an idyllic outdoor setting or the premises of an assisted suicide organization, for example. So, with this, I don't have to explain to you why I hate this. I sat in this chair, this very one I'm sitting in right now, with the old laptop that had a heart attack every time you went live, for 24 hours straight, and advocated against suicide. For 24 hours, I sat in this chair and interviewed people, some of whom, unfortunately, I don't remember, on what they were doing with their lives, what they thought about the idea, what they thought about the organization, and what they thought about the fundraiser. And why it was important to them. I sat up for 24 hours and slept for 13 hours after that to raise $1,800, $1,883 to be precise, because I hate this idea. I really do. And with this coming out here too, I mean, I understand the terminal illness side of things, I really do. But there are better ways to do this as well, especially with the Right to Try Act in the United States. I understand they don't have this in the Netherlands, but with the Right to Try Act in the United States, where you can forge forward and actually be a test for something if you've got nothing left to lose, to see if you can cure somebody down in the future, or maybe even have something cured for yourself. There's so many better ways to go out and do this than coming in here, pushing a series of buttons and saying, okay, I want to die right now. And most commonly, and this kind of goes to the reason why I talked about this picture here, I understand right now that what they're doing with this has to do with terminal illness. But that's just another step, and how far do we get? How much of a step is it before it steps from a terminal illness to this, what you see on the screen? Where's the line? What's the step? Once this technology is already here. I mean, look at abortion for an example to this. How long was it from when we went from safe, legal, and rare in the aughts all the way up through 2010 to on-demand, shout your abortion and be proud of it? It was only like 7 years. How long before we go to it's only because of medical conditions, medical problems, and anything else like that in terminal illness, to I don't feel like living anymore, let's put a quarter in a booth and make sure it gets taken care of for everybody else? Why are we so depressed? I don't know. But man, oh man, oh man, oh man, does this really bother me. I hate this. I hate everything about this. I was able to be swayed about 1984. There's no swaying for me. I can't do it. I cannot get behind this, because I see where it leads. But with that, on that depressing note, let's head out of here for the day. Now that I've thoroughly clinically depressed everybody in the audience, let's head out. Let's change up the track and go. Where's my outro music? There it is. So, on that depressing note, thank you everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. It was a little bit of a quiet day, but I hope all the lurkers at least got one message in, so we can come back on the Friday show and say a special thank you to everybody who chats in the live chat. Also, to read Decadent Society that Paul recommended to me. I've got that still on my notes here, so make sure if you're lurking, you get those last minute messages in, because I want to say thank you to you. I love saying thank you to the audience, and we'll even do a little bit of live chat tomorrow. So come back and hang out for that, plus all the news stories that we didn't get to cover, because There were a lot of them. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, were there a lot of them that we didn't get to cover today because I spent way too much time talking about that stupid Christmas tree story and the national debt story. So I hope to see you tomorrow as we get through some more of this and as we break through some more of this as well. But I got to head out of here. We got to go see the Daily Ignoramus because it's a great show, a great friend of the show as well. You guys make sure if you're not following Stephen Ignoramus, you do so. If you're on the Twitch side, stick around and we will do the raid. I'll actually get that set up right now and go see Mr. Ignoramus himself. Otherwise, come back here and hang out with us here tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. Until then, 7:15 a.m. Central Time, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.